Hello, welcome to Naomi's Voice, the podcast that is the voice of wisdom, the voice of reason in a chaotic and for the most part confusing world we live in. Thank you for being here. Where do we begin with this generation gap conversation? First of all, I just want to do a quick outlining of our agenda and purpose. Naomi was a biblical woman in the book of Ruth who was Ruth's wisdom and Ruth's guidance. And so we are Naomi's voice for a generation that we believe needs that kind of wisdom and guidance. So therefore, we're going to begin with, previously, I defined the generation gap as a break in continuity of wisdom and knowledge that should have been embraced and or utilized by the ensuing generations, namely Y, Millennials, X, and Z. We'll eventually get to an explanation of those terms, but for now I want to give us a starting point by going a little further back to what is called the silent generation, and probably venturing even further back to give us a more complete understanding and clarity of where we are today as a society, but more importantly, as a culture. So let's look at the silent generation. This is the generation between 1928 and 1945. Why was it called the silent generation? This generation, because of certain events that were happening during this era, brought about some difficult times in which they were either born or coming of age. The Great Depression and World War II. Therefore, it was seen as a silencing of their personalities as individuals and as a society. Their silence was one of distracted need to survive instead of thriving. Ergo, silent generation. It is said the generation before worked to change the system, and that was also known as the Roaring Twenties. And the silent generation purposed to work within the system. Why am I starting with them? Why am I going back beyond the Roaring Twenties? Because there was an interruption after the gaiety and all of the laughter of the Roaring Twenties. All of a sudden, the stock market crashed, throwing society into a mental and emotional spiral. Prior to that, we had a nation torn apart by a system of greed and cognizant dissonance that perpetuated atrocities against fellow human beings, passing on the good, bad, and the ugly to the next generation. Therefore, it's necessary for us to sift through, find the good that fell into the gaps between these generations, revive them, and use them. I'm reminded that Solomon said in the book of Proverbs, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and with all you're getting, get an understanding. When we reference the prior generations, we are coming from a place of being able to acquire knowledge that produced a particular character of a man and or woman to be able to overcome, to survive, if you will, circumstances and situation, life beyond their control. It was a tenacity to persevere when it seemed all odds were against them and nothing seemed to be in their favor. And yet there were those who were survivors of slavery, of war, the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, etc., and lived to tell of it. I surmise there was something they had and or used quote unquote wisdom that got them through. Although I have witnessed and continue to witness positive traits within the various generations, nevertheless we observe and have observed a level of weakness in character, moral values, mental and emotional stability, the incapability to be able to think for themselves, a lack of not being able to process information and determine its value or non-value. Do you realize that the majority of our idioms, words of wisdom pertaining to life, its circumstances and situations come from past generations and are still relevant today? Yet it is the very thing that was lost, either altogether or dismissed as having no relevancy at all. And yet, these are the life-sustaining words of wisdom from generations past that got them through and have the same power to transform and change lives. Stick with us. We're going somewhere. Join us next week. We'll see you on Naomi's Voice.